Hey,
Hello.
we have an old friend. Hi, Imogen. It's
Yes.
been a long, long
Hello.
time.
friend.
Like way too long. So this is episode 150. It's kind of a special thing for us because we had to put the podcast on hold for a while. Now we're full bore ahead. We're Criterion nerding again. And Imogen, you are one of our favorite Criterion, if you don't mind the phrase, nerds, just like us. We love what you do
Nerds
and
like
thrilled to
us. Yeah.
have you back. So have you been? How you been?
I've been good. I've been really busy, but it's great to be back. And congratulations on your 150th
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
episode.
And for you
Thank you.
too, you've been doing, even though, we haven't talked to you in a while or haven't had you on the show in a while, you've been doing some fantastic work just over, well, 2 years. So
Thank you.
I've really been watching from afar, and like every time Jill, you might have heard us, we're like, oh, Imogen. So we always love when we see you. And then
You've
you're
been
on this
very
month.
busy, and we
Yes.
all benefit from your busy schedule. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for working on. But well, we'll get to that. But the thing
Sure.
is, you're busy, but it doesn't show in your work. It's very grounded. So we'll get to that in just a moment. Wanted to share that this is a kind of, since it's a special episode, we're trying a live episode. Like it's not really live. It's just the three of us here, but we're gonna try not to cut. So, if like just now I said, so, that's not a way to start a sentence, but I do that a lot. Um, there's an now I'm conscious of them. Yeah, it's gonna be a one shot, like not like 1917, definitely not like rope. What's a Russian arc? How about Russian arc?
It
Just
is
without
not
the
going to be the cabana
Birdman.
sequence in Goodfellas. This is not just it's not going to be a long,
Yeah.
not quite that masterful, but we're gonna do our best. We're gonna
Yeah,
do our
it's
best
not
to have
the notorious. Yeah.
28 minute segment and then zoom into someone's backside as they change the reels. That we're not going to
And
be that masterful.
it's only going to be 5 hours or so. You're cool with that, right,
Right.
Imogen?
Yeah, just 5 hours.
And part of it, I actually is today's my birthday. Yay me. I have my notifications off like all day because birthday. I love birthdays, but it's also can be a little nerve-wracking. So the best. I'm very very happy to spend it with you and Jill, two of my favorite people. You're my favorite academic, whatever you call yourself, historian. So anyway, thanks for being here. Love having you. And you were just in Bologna too. And I think you're about to travel again, right?
I am, yes. I am about to go to Locarno next week
Hmm.
for the Columbia Pictures Centennial Retrospective. That is going to be a big part of
Hmm.
the festival this year. It is 40 films from 1929 to 1959. It was
Wow. Wow.
programmed by Esan Poschbacht, who's one of the co-directors of the festival in Bologna. There is a book length book style catalog, which I contributed to, an essay on the films of Bud Bedecker at
Oh,
Columbia.
nice.
So I'll be going, introducing a few films, being on the roundtable, and I will be later on writing something about the retrospective for, well, that will be forthcoming.
Nice.
And people who watch the Criterion channel might be aware of the Columbia Centennial. It's being celebrated on the channel throughout the year. And I wrote something a few months back about the series of Columbia films from the 50s, the kind of big prestige literary adaptations that they were doing in the 50s. So yeah, somehow this year is all about Columbia for me, in part. But I'm excited. I've never been to Locarno before, so
That's awesome.
looking forward
Yeah.
very much to being in
Switzerland's pretty
a
cool.
Swiss lake instead of the
Yeah.
Manhattan swamp.
So I'm wondering, Imogen, if we will get a release of um, Middle of the Night, because that is a Columbia film, 1959, Kim Novak, Frederick March, and it has long been there's like a DVD that was in like a kind of subpar Kim Novak box set. And that is a film that I try to introduce to as many people as possible. It is one of my absolute favorites. I think it's Kim Novak's best performance. It was a performance that she is her personal favorite. Farron Smith Nimme interviewed Lee Grant, I think 2017. I may be wrong about that. And talked about that film with Miss Grant, and because she has a role in it. That is one that, oh God, I'm hoping on this occasion that they will release.
Well, you just introduced it to me because I have actually not seen this film.
Wow,
So
wow.
I need to track it down.
Oh, Imogen,
Um,
it's so good. It's a Patty Chayefsky script. It was originally on Broadway. It was am I getting this right? It was Edward G. Robinson and Jenna Rollins, I believe, were in the original Broadway. And it's oh my God. It's so good. It's so
if I
good.
get a chance to ask anyone from Sony when I'm there, I will bring that up.
Yeah,
Thank you.
say make this happen, please. So yeah, maybe you can be on that disc,
You
but
know, and if you need to like drop my name to help kind of grease the wheels, just you go ahead. They're going to be
yeah.
like, "Oh, Jill wants this? Oh, of course, we'll do it."
And Bologna to New York, the swamp of Manhattan, as you put it, and then back to Switzerland. That sounds kind of amazing, but also kind of exhausting. So, because I love traveling, but I also don't love I love sleep. So, hopefully, you are managing that well.
Well, jet lag and film festivals are not a great
Yes.
combination. And I wish those European film festivals would not have these 9 a.m. screenings.
Hmm.
But my strategy is generally to just give myself permission to not even attempt to go to the first screenings of the day.
That's smart.
Um, and because then, of course, there's also the 9:30 p.m. screenings that
Hmm.
you
Right.
want to get to.
Which
So
is like
yeah,
six.
Right.
it is
Right.
exhausting, but
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sure it
you.
will be worth
And
it.
there's always the occasional, I remember when I was doing more film festivals, this is really like pre-COVID. And I would try to just cram everything in. So I would go like a crazy person, go to like 6 screenings in a day, which, you know, that's kind of dumb because it's not that's not sustainable over 3-4 days or
Mm.
longer. But I will admit that there is, more than one screening that I've may have nodded off during.
Our good friend Peter Becker
Mhm.
said
Hi, Peter.
something when we were in Bologna just recently, that if you're not falling asleep occasionally in screenings, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. You're not seeing enough movies. So next time that happens, you know that you have Peter Becker's blessing.
I,
Yeah.
I feel so much better about that because the guilt that washes over me when I think it was like and it wasn't like a film I hadn't seen. It was like Mildred Pierce, but it was like a beautiful 35 millimeter restoration. And I'm sitting in the Egyptian Theater, which is just a stunning movie palace. And my friend Sean was like elbowing me in the ribs as the credits are rolling. And I had slept through probably the last third of the film. So I missed all the good stuff, and all the hissing and the booing and the cat calling that happens when Veda comes on screen. Um, so it's good to know that Peter supports a doze every now and then. So
And I know that at Ritrovato there was a 7 hour, I believe, cut of Napoleon. And no shade to Napoleon. I think it's one of the greatest, and I would love to see it in like this majestic, the triptych in a majestic theater. But 7 hours of Gantz is did you see it by chance? Did you?
So I did. It was actually, they only showed part one.
That's
So
right.
it was in fact a mere 3.5 hours. And that also meant it did not include the triptych section, which is in part
Right,
two.
right.
This
Yeah.
was, you know, sure, just a week or so before the whole thing premiered in Paris on, I think, July 4th and 5th. So, but I did see it. It was a highlight of my time in Bologna.
Awesome.
You know, I had seen Napoleon only once before in the original, you know, Kevin Brownlow. I think it was actually
Right.
probably the Francis Ford Coppola cut that he did in
Right, right.
1980, because I
Okay.
think that's the only one that was ever released in the United States on a home
Right.
video. I saw this on a VHS tape. This is how long ago it was.
Wow.
You know, on a TV. And I had been waiting ever since to see it again. And, you know, one of the biggest regrets of my life is that I didn't go to Oakland when they had the,
Yep.
you know, one-time screenings at the Paramount in Oakland. But so I was very, very excited that I would get a chance. There was one screening in Bologna. It was in a new theater. I mean, a theater newly renovated, an old theater. Very beautiful. New score, new restoration. It was completely stunning. I did not doze at all.
Awesome.
Even though it was
But
warm
I was not going to
in the
ask.
theater, I will say. It was a little too warm, but I mean, if for anyone who hasn't seen that movie, I mean, it is like a high watermark of
Yeah.
cinema. And there were, you know, applause and people screaming after certain sequences
Wow.
because they're just so thrilling. So
I have a lot of friends that made it out to that screening event in Oakland. Was it? I think it was 2014, maybe.
Yeah,
and
that was the
including
BFI
Scott.
cut, right? Yeah.
Yeah, including Scott McGee from Turner Classic Movies. And I mean, he flew out there, and I was like, "Oh, did TCM fly you out there?" He's like, "No, I went out on my own dime, and to see that." And he said it was by
the
far,
greatest experience of his life, right?
yeah.
I mean,
He said it.
everybody
He said
says
it.
who was there.
Yeah, he just couldn't put into words how it was. He was like, it was a religious experience.
Yeah, that's
So
what I've
Yeah,
heard.
well,
I'm
I
super. I'm
have to
so
say,
jealous.
yes, so I'd always regretted that, but I have to say, I had another, you saying religious experience. I've been having a very busy summer because I also attended the Nitrate Picture Show in Rochester at the Eastman House for the first time
Nice.
at the end of May, which is a festival. It's about 4 days in which all of the films are shown on Nitrate. I mean, that is the whole purpose of the festival, because Eastman House is, I believe, the only venue on the East Coast that is permitted to screen Nitrate films. And they showed, appropriately enough, on a Sunday morning, an original Technicolor Nitrate print of Meet Me in St. Louis.
Oh my
And
God.
that was a religious experience. I mean, it
Nice,
was like
nice.
looking at, you know, stained glass with light streaming through it. It was so beautiful. And it made that film in particular somehow so much more moving,
Oh my
even,
gosh.
you know,
Wow.
than it already is. So yeah,
I've always wanted to go there. Is Jared Case still with Eastman? He was one of their head people with the Nitrate, like the founder of the festival. I met him years ago.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think
Okay.
the festival was founded by Paolo Perchiuzzi, who was there. It's
Okay.
currently run by Peter Bagrov.
Okay. Because I know he was on whatever the, you know, advisory panel or whatever for that. but he awesome guy, and he was actually, I think he was instrumental in the restoration of Best Years of Our Lives too. But I was curious if Jared's still there. I had lost touch with him in the
Don't
last couple
know.
of years, but I've always wanted to go to that festival. It
It is
sounds so
really worth it.
marvelous.
I had never been, I'd never been. I'd again heard these, kind of over the top hyperbolic things people had said about the mystical experience of watching Nitrate. I had also heard, from at least one person, the opposite, the kind of skeptical view that actually this is all in people's minds and there's not really
Yeah.
anything that special about watching Nitrate. So I was very curious
Yeah.
what it would be like.
So was
And
that your first Nitrate
it
screening?
actually was my first experience of seeing
Wow.
Nitrate
Okay.
Wow. Wow.
projected.
So I
I
do
haven't
want to
seen one. Yeah,
say
so that
for
sounds
anyone,
awesome.
so like I don't want to sound like a freak, because I do think that I'm less concerned with, there are people who are purists and they only want to see things on film. And I think that gets a little boring because, and it's limiting. And there's so many wonderful films to see that I just want to see them however they are presented.
Mhm.
But I have seen, I think, 5 or 6 films on Nitrate, including Black Narcissus, Leave Her to
Mm.
Heaven.
Mm.
I've seen The Man Who Knew Too Much, the original. Um, and I'm missing a couple others. There were 1 or 2 that were fine. I didn't feel like they were any more significant than a good 35 millimeter or a really good DCP. But Leave Her to Heaven was a religious experience. Black Narcissus, oh my
Wow.
Lord,
Yeah.
was incredible. The fly fishing scene, the flashback scene with Deborah Carr standing in the water, and you could just see kind of the silver on top of the
Yes.
water.
Yes.
I've never you could just reach out and touch it. And so I do want to say that if anyone ever gets an opportunity to see one of these films on Nitrate, it's every time they run it is like one less time they can show it.
Mhm.
It truly is a rare experience, and it really does live up to the hype. It
Yeah.
is stunning.
So, I mean, first of all, like I will watch something on YouTube in a crummy
Yes.
print if it's something I really want to see and that's
Sure.
the way I can see it. I'm not,
Right.
I do think people who are purists, you're kind of only hurting yourself. And it is a completely different experience. I mean, just seeing film projected over
Mhm.
watching something, on your TV is going to be a different experience.
Right.
It is alive in a way, and much was made of this idea that a projection, particularly of a Nitrate film, is like a live performance,
Yes.
and it's not about perfection. I mean, compared with, say, a new digital restoration DCP
Right.
that can be really pristine, absolutely, flawless, not a speck, not a smudge, it's never going to go out of focus. But there's a lifelessness about it compared with what you get with these vintage prints. And there are many factors. It's not only Nitrate versus safety, it's also the
Right.
generation of the
Mhm.
print. Some of these are prints that come from very, very close to the camera negative. There's a lot of different factors. But there is, I do feel like there was something about a kind of, it's almost like a three-dimensionality in the Nitrate. It's like it's not about it being crisper, but it's got somehow like a depth to it, which possibly
Yes.
has something to do with the thickness of the emulsion. I don't know. I am not really a technically an expert on this, but yeah, the luminosity and the kind of depth of it is really special. And it does,
Oh yeah.
vary from print to print, how much you see that. There was also an
Right.
absolutely beautiful print of The Good Fairy, the William Wyler,
Oh my
Margaret
God.
Sullivan, a film I
Nice.
love, but it was like, just the like shimmering quality of it, and just the little, like the rhinestones on her little usherette uniform and things like that. It was so beautiful. And
Ugh,
for that, the audience loved the film. They were laughing, uproariously. So it was also, what seeing something with an audience
right,
brings to the film. So
right.
yes, I would say absolutely go, if you get a chance, and know that it was like at capacity.
Oh,
Get
For,
tickets. Yeah.
they just have one
Right.
theater. So if you do want to go, like, book your tickets
Yeah.
early.
Oh yeah. And one
It's a
last
very
thing
popular event.
I'll speak
Oh,
to
and
this is
wait, sorry,
that,
I
oh,
wanted to,
no,
and
go ahead.
I did want to say one more thing.
Yeah,
Because you said something about every time one of these prints is shown, it's one less time that it can be shown. And I think there's actually a certain amount of controversy about how responsible it is to screen nitrate
right,
prints for just recreational purposes.
right.
Should they just be saved for preservation purposes? They did make a big point of trying to answer that by talking about the amount of work that they do on these prints to repair them, to inspect them. It's not like they grab prints off the shelf and stick them in the projector and
Right, right.
so, I think they want to, as much as possible, to have this be an event that is actually promoting the preservation of these
Yes,
prints, which if they sit on the shelf forever, people might not
Right.
even notice that they're just,
exactly.
deteriorating and decaying. So they do a lot of work on the prints to make them projectable. They obviously only project things that they feel they can safely project.
Right,
So,
right. And
this is
it's
an event run by preservationists.
right. And oh, absolutely. And there, and I will just say there are collectors out there who own nitrate and who run them in their homes. I actually know someone that does this, and it's, but um, I think that if you go somewhere that is supposed to do this, they're supposed to, they are licensed, they are preservationists. And again, Nitrate Film Fest is where to do this. One thing I do want to say that it kind of adds to um, this kind of that special, and, anytime you're watching something in a theater, and especially if it's a beautiful theater where they're treating the cinematic experience the way it should be, um, is that there is kind of a romanticized, I know this is really what added to these screenings for me, is knowing that audiences in the 1940s saw this same print. And that really adds to it. But to your point about them being on the shelf, is like they do no good if we're not sharing them. And so if they are you know doing what they can to preserve these films, and they're making sure that yes, this is okay to be projected, what good does it do if they're not
Mhm.
sharing it with people? So I'm so glad you had that experience. It really is special. And I've got to get up there to Rochester. This is something I've
Yeah.
really wanted to do for a long time. So I'm so glad you had a good time.
When we talk about traveling, so maybe we can look out for some special screenings in New York. We talked
Yeah.
about going to LA. New York's a little easier for us. There's not very likely to be many in the Southeast, but you never know. Yeah. Anyway, we have a.
Yeah,
Oh,
really
sorry.
good. It's been a really good, I just have to say, it's been a really good spring and summer for repertory cinema in New York.
I've been envious
Not
because it's
to, sorry,
not a long
not to
flight.
make you
Yeah.
envious, but we've had some really
Well,
great things. The Hiroshi Shimizu
yeah,
retrospective,
I saw, yeah, that you
in
wrote on that. Yeah.
spring, which I wrote on and was fantastic. I had
Mm,
been waiting for years to see more of his films, and seeing the four that, Criterion put out on the
right,
Eclipse
right.
set around the channel. And it included one film that had just recently been rediscovered, and this was the premiere outside Japan. And that, we had then the Powell and Pressburger complete retrospective at MoMA that's just
Yeah,
wrapping
yeah.
up.
So
We
jealous.
have
I'm
I
so
know
this,
where we're
jealous.
going. Please happen.
Yeah, we
Peter,
need
make it
another.
happen.
we have a great series of Mexican popular cinema from the
Yeah.
40s, 50s running right now
Oh
at Lincoln
yeah.
Center. Um, So it's been like a real embarrassment of riches.
I used to go to New York a lot, and I still go. Of course, it slowed down during COVID for most people, but I'm still on all the theaters mailing lists. So yeah. But I know
I
I'm
had to take
envious.
myself off of those, Aaron, because I was getting so depressed because I
I just
couldn't go.
Well, you often, if you see 4K, it means that for example, Seven Samurai is touring 4K, and there's a Region B announcement or disc already announced. So that means probably sometimes, hopefully soon, we'll get that. But of course, that's a massive picture. So, but anyway, we have a lot to talk about. So I'm going to move us along. We're going to talk about a little bit of French cinema. October Criterion releases, which you're on one of them. Yay. I have to ask, did you know, because we were talking before the announcements were released, and we're like, hey, come on and hang. Did you know that that was going to drop beforehand? The Lewton set?
Uh,
Like the timing of the Luton set. Did you know when it
Did
was
you
going to
know
be
October?
announced?
no, I don't think I did.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
I was wondering if you were biting your tongue, but I was because we're like, come talk about October because it makes perfect sense. So we'll get to that, and then we have a fun thing actually. Jill's background is a little bit of a spoiler, but we're gonna do something for noir, and I know I actually am very impressed how you kind of have been really, I mean. Not kind of. You are a noir expert, and I know you get invited. In fact, I think the last time we talked about it, which has been a while, you're like, no, noir is like a brand, like you just put noir on a box or a fest and people will come. um and of course you've been on a lot of those discs,
Well,
but I
yeah,
like
there's
that you
so many labels that put out if they put out a box set and it says film noir on it, everybody's like, take my money.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
the definitions of noir are definitely getting a little
yeah.
loose,
Yes.
but I am a sucker for it. I will buy it every time.
And might sound bad, so this might be the first edit, but like I don't want to say you were being typecast as the noir person, but if you were, because a lot of people think of you and Eddie and numerous other people, but I think you broke out of that that typecast academic historian pretty well. So I'm actually excited we can talk because I know you're a big French film fan. Look at our backgrounds. So yeah, let's, if you don't mind, let's just talk briefly about the French films first. And this is where our brands are a little blurred too, because we have this Cinema Journeys project where we program, events, I guess, for subscribers. And we are actually looking at putting together a French one. So we did this in May with Japan. In fact, that's where I saw your Shimizu work because I was trying to get a Shimizu in there. But it's really tough, like in a month, with to get a whole 100 years of cinema represented. So
It was
I
very
I
much
think we
a
did okay.
primer sampler, but you
Yes,
can't, yeah, it's impossible to cover in four, well, I guess three, was it three calls? In
yeah, three,
three
six movies,
calls,
three
six
calls. Yeah,
films.
yeah.
I mean, how can you even approach
But
it? But we did, I think we did pick a pretty fair representative of at least eras in classic Japanese cinema. So
Yeah, and because Japanese, so bringing it back to Criterion, because there's so much in the Criterion library, I think that was, and we have to look at what's available for people on disc, stream, well, mostly streaming, but also disc. So I think every single one of the films we programmed was on the channel or somewhere, Max or something. But we're looking at doing another. I guess you could, if you compare it to a class, you could call it like a survey class. So we're gonna do classic French. We'll probably do, well, you kind of have to do Nouvelle Vague, New Wave, and then something modern, which is really, really tough because, as after the New Wave, it's a whole lot of kind of new wave, but not really. And then, other filmmakers get their opportunities. And then, yeah, I think you really saw a sea change, not categorically, but in the 90s, you saw some new auteurs. And of course, then new French Extremity, which we're not going to do. And, and that's actually not, I mean, I do watch those and I like really everything, but that's not really my taste. So yeah, we're thinking, of course, I think we talked before, I like Gilda Moore, so that's finally out from Grasshopper Films. So we're going to program that as a classic film. It's one of my favorites, so can't hesitate. And the thing is, we want to program interesting films that like people haven't seen a gazillion times or that have new context. So was thinking maybe even though everybody's seen it, but rules of the game has kind of fallen. It fell in the sight and sound. Not that that means anything, but I think it might be relevant today still. So, and then of course the new wave. It's really tough to pick obscure films, so we'll just skip that. But I know that you did a modern film class over at Main Media, and I think that was new post New Wave, right?
Well, what I did was this was a little bit crazy, but it was a two-part class that basically went from 1895 to the present day.
Yeah.
So part one was just up to the edge of just to the cusp of the new wave. I ended it with Elevator to the Gallows
Yeah.
and Purple Noon,
Well,
both
good
films that
ones.
are right
Mhm.
before the new wave really starts. And then the second part started with the new wave and then continued. So, the last few classes got into the present,
Mhm.
late 20th and 21st centuries. So obviously I had to be very, very selective about what I was doing. Um, I wanted to try to look also at the kind of the increasing diversity in French film and the kind of the relationship to post-colonial film. But I mean, what is interesting is that, a lot of the new wave filmmakers kept making films into the 21st century. So they don't go away.
Right, right.
Their films kind of changed, but, so I did I did a class on Varda, and I did Claire from 5 to 7, but I also did Vagabond from 1985.
I love that film.
And then of course there's Gleaners and I, and
Mhm.
she keeps going. Romer keeps going, up to, the millennium.
Right, right.
So it's not like there's the new wave and then there's after the
Right.
new wave. It kind of all, flows together. Um, in terms of recent stuff, I mean, I think Aaron, you mentioned this too. I like Celine Sciamma a lot,
I love
especially
yeah.
Petite Maman, her most recent
Oh,
film.
yes.
I did Portrait of a Lady on Fire in the class.
Nice.
So
I was thinking of Petite Maman because I don't think that one is well, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, as you know, is on the Sight and Sound. I forget where, but it was featured pretty prominently. And Siama is one of those filmmakers. I can't imagine what it was like when Ackerman came on the scene, or somebody, or Varda actually. I can't put myself in the seats of these feeders to see what they were experiencing, like Cleo from 5 to 7. I think that's kind of a good. Of course, it's not exactly like Siama. Nobody is, or nobody's like Varda, but I could see some parallels. But yeah, I would love to put Petite Maman because that has kind of a supernatural element, but it's also personal and familial and wonderful. Yeah.
well, and it's a really good example of that she has these very radical ideas about her approach to narrative,
Yes. Yes.
um, which she has talked about, and this idea of sort of removing the idea that conflict has to be at the center of narrative. And so
Right. Right. Right.
Petite Maman is this lovely, small,
Yes.
quiet film, but that is really radical in the way that she's just like doing something that you're not supposed to do, doing, and
Exactly.
kind
Yeah.
of reinventing the whole idea of what a movie narrative can be. And so particularly, when you look at women filmmakers, there's a point at which it's like, well, it's just we're, excited
Right.
that a
Right.
woman is making a movie or something. But it's like
Right.
with someone like Sciamma, she truly is like bringing something different
Hmm.
and shifting the perspective in interesting ways. And so I think she is one of the most, interesting people working right now.
Yeah. I'm
I mean,
gonna
of
grab
course,
his
I also
list.
did, Claire Denis. I did Beau Travail, because I love that film. But I also really like, 35 Shots of Rum and some of her other.
I love
I
Beau
feel like
Travail.
I
Yeah.
feel
Denis
like
is great.
Petite Maman also is just a really good entry point for anyone that doesn't, because I have seen that. And, I was talking to you, Imogen, before we recorded that French cinema, other than, some of the more popular classics and getting into new wave, I'm, you know, not very well versed in it. This is an area of international cinema that I want to explore more. And I saw that film and actually showed it to my daughter. And it just felt like
Hmm.
a really great entry point and pretty, I don't want to say palatable. That doesn't feel like the right word, but it just feels like maybe a little more more broad appeal to maybe people that are hesitant to watch something, with subtitles. I know that that's you
Well, I think
know,
the French
I,
subscribers are gonna get over that pretty fast. So, unless they
well, yeah, no.
awesome
But I
French.
mean, I'm talking about people that
Yeah.
are, kind of put their hand up and go, "Oh, well, I'm not going to watch something, in black and white, or I'm not going to watch
Right.
something that, is not in English." Or that people are worried that they're not going to be able, because there is this huge contingency of people who are love movies and maybe they're only in the, studio Hollywood classic, kind of mentality. And they're hesitant to dive into that because they're worried that maybe they can't focus on what's happening on the screen while they're reading something. And so I think there are certain films that are great entry points, and I feel like that one is a really good one.
Yeah, it's not stuck
Yeah,
full of dialogue. It has
no.
it's lets you
No,
the film
no.
breathes. Yeah, it's
It,
gorgeous.
and I mean, she does really interesting things also with setting it in this sort of ambiguous time
Yes.
Yes.
period. So there is a kind of universality about it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
However, a film which is not quite that same way and is maybe a little
Mm.
bit more challenging, but that I also really like is Saint-Omer by Alice Diop,
Alice Diop, yeah. I
years
still
ago.
I'm
Um,
pointing to my TV like you. Um, yeah, good. Sorry.
also really interesting. And I am courtroom dramas are like not my favorite genre. And so I was particularly interested in this is to me is one of the uh most engrossing, engaging courtroom dramas I've ever seen. Um,
So you
Interesting.
probably don't
Yeah.
like that back half of Leave Her to Heaven when Vincent
Oh,
Price is
I was thinking Anatomy of a Fall, but yeah, maybe both.
it's where a lot of movies go in the last 20 minutes, and
Mhm. Yeah,
and we get to hear again about all the things we already
yeah.
saw
yeah.
happen.
Or even
Of
PMP
course,
did a
there
matter of
are
life and
great
death. Yeah,
examples. There are great
yeah,
examples.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Anyway,
Preminger, yeah. Yeah, those are all great. I think and the one thing is, again, the challenge is picking something from, you know, some really modern, of course, Petite Maman is it's a new release basically. Same with Diop. Um, so yeah, and you wrote this essay on Romer, and I think of Romer. I think I've seen. I I'm not positive, but probably seen all of his films, and I imagine you have as well. By the way, I just have to say that your essay on Jill and I think we write not as well as you. We are self-aware to know that, but we respect writers, and if you see us looking at the Criterion announcements or any distributor boutique label, one of the first things we look for is who wrote the essay. So, and we have a lot of
100%.
friends
I
like
skip I mean,
yes,
all the other supplements are great, but the very first thing I do is look at who wrote the essay. That's my number one thing.
I would love to pass that along to my friend, the editorial director. She will be very happy to
Please.
hear that.
oh
Please.
yeah, please do.
Please
Oh no,
do, because I have written a few booklet essays, and it is, and I've also, I was a script writer for TCM.
Mhm.
I wrote for Filmstruck. I've written for Netflix and for, it is not easy. And it is really not easy to write an essay of that caliber. The amount of research that goes into it, the amount of, and then the limitations that you have on what you can discuss, or what, whatever editorial guidance that you're getting, and, or, guidelines that you have. It is a really hard job. And so you, and I know, Farron and Sheila O'Malley, and there's so many others that have written incredible, Angelica J. Bastien, so many, and especially if it's a lady writer coming in, is like 110% better. So I love seeing, that's the very first thing I look for. And is, there's so many places that are not valuing the work of writers. We're seeing just so much of our publishing and online media being decimated. So to see that Criterion, as well as other labels, that they're still valuing the written word, and how important it is to understanding the intentions of a filmmaker or an actor. It's just a very special thing. And Criterion they're the best at this. So this was a marvelous piece, and I've not seen any Romare, but I loved this piece. So I'm very excited to dive in.
Thank
And
you. I
those
mean,
on
of course,
video can see, yeah, it's on my
of course,
screen.
I couldn't agree more about Criterion and about the importance of valuing writing. And they really do, in terms of their editing and their curation.
Right.
This, I mean, I was so overjoyed to get this assignment, and it was such a pleasure to work on this. And it was really, I had been kind of immersed in Romare, partly because of teaching the class. And it was particularly fun to write about Tales of the Four Seasons because, as I say in the essay, it's this kind of culmination of his earlier work, and it kind of folds in themes and structures and echoes from the the Six Moral Tales and the Comedies and Proverbs, these previous series that he had done. And so it was really fun to like find all of these connections. But also I think what I most wanted to do was to counter the idea that I think some people have, that Romero's films are just they're cerebral, which they are, but I think people sometimes think of them as just kind of, they're just intellectual, or it's all talking, or that there's almost something dry about them, which I think is not true at all. So yes, I wanted to highlight the cinematic qualities, the musical qualities, how important kind of rhythm and is in his films, and then his whole method of working is really interesting. His casting is really interesting. So this was really fun to work on.
And that's the mark of a great,
particularly glad to know that,
yeah, that's the mark of a great article, great essayist, a great writer, is that your goal here is to get people to watch these films. That's what this is about. And you always do such a great job of giving that context, and also saying, and kind of demystifying. So when you're saying that this filmmaker has this reputation of being maybe inaccessible due to him being so cerebral, and you're saying, well, actually no, that's not the case, and here's why.
There's more to it.
You need to that you need to jump in, and I'm going to show you how to do this. So I think, and a lot of these, with Criterion and all these other labels that have these essays, they're not making a ton of money on these articles, but they know that it's an important component of the curation and responsibly putting these films out there. So I'm so thrilled every time we get a new essay, because it's kind of also thumbing at the system that is saying this is not valuable anymore, when yeah, it is.
Yeah, and so as people on video can see, I'm just scrolling through the essay, and it's a very long read, but a very worthwhile read. And I really like how you kind of pieced all the films together, and actually how you set it up too. I'm, just talking about the constant movement, and I forget where that is on my screen. And I also like this here. Can see this. One thing about Romer that I hear often is about the male gaze, and I think that's valid. I think that's fair. I mean, I've seen Claire's knee. Who hasn't? But I I think you you positioned that very well.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think
Sorry, I didn't mean to catch you off guard with
no,
that.
I mean I think you're right that that is an idea that people have, which is kind of another thing that I, in a way, want to push back on, because the six moral tales all have male protagonists. They're all about men, sort of men looking at women as potential romantic or sexual, partners, objects. But he is so brilliant at, kind of dissecting and exposing this type of kind of male rationalization. And films like Claire's Knee and La Collectionneuse, I think, to me, it's very obvious that there is this kind of gap between the male protagonist and the actual kind of authorial voice of the film. That he's
Yes.
kind of like giving these guys enough rope to hang themselves and letting us watch
Right.
them, kind of make fools of themselves, with their whole kind of rationalizing, self-justifying, and Romer said in so many words, no one should ever think that I am an apologist for my male characters, even
Right.
when they are apologizing for themselves. In fact, he saw them as mostly being fairly unsympathetic characters. And then, after the Six Moral Tales, he shifts largely into films that are about women protagonists. And he has this fascination with female friendships. And that was actually kind of where this first started, was that I had this interest in writing about female friendship in Romer, which is central to two of the moral tales, Spring and Autumn, but also to many of the comedies and proverbs. And as I say in the essay, when he made Tale of Summer, which is the only one that has a male protagonist, he said it had been so long since he had a male protagonist that it felt kind of strange and uncomfortable to him. So I actually think he's a really interesting, male filmmaker who is, I believe, genuinely interested in trying to sort of understand, or imagine himself into a woman's mind and viewpoint.
Yeah, I think you'll find it interesting. We're about to do a coming of age journey for our project, and we actually programmed the Green Ray, which is, I think, if you think about it, it's kind of, it kind of is. You don't. There's not like an age cutoff. There's all sorts. In fact, I would say my background is A Summer's Tale. I would say that's coming of age, even though they're probably all adults. Yeah. So I think
So, go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Anyway, do you think we should move on to the criterions?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask very, very quickly, if you can summarize this very quickly, because I'm curious and I'm sure that other people are as well, but kind of what is your like kind of a very, very overview of like your process when you're preparing to write for one of these essays? Like, do you like dive into do you like dive into a bunch of books? Do you just watch the films? Do you pick section? Like, what is kind of your like process for researching and preparing for that, if you don't mind sharing? Or is it proprietary? Is it an Imogen proprietary?
It's not proprietary. I'm not sure it's not structured enough to be proprietary. I don't think.
Got it. Okay.
I mean, I always start with the film. I start with, immersing myself in the film. I always do reading and research, and then I have a
Yeah.
whole bunch of notes, and then I start trying to put them together into some kind of an outline, but I do not work from a really, I don't necessarily, I don't try to have a really concrete outline before I get started, because I
Good.
very much feel that the writing process is where you find out what that's going to be. And yeah, I mean, as I think probably anyone who's ever written anything would agree, you know, beginnings and endings are the hardest part. The middle kind of takes care of itself, but you know, where do you start? How do you give, you know, how do you come up with something that's going to sort of be a hook for the reader? And then where do you land? But basically, I mean, the main thing I would say about my process is just that it involves an extraordinary amount of editing and rewriting. So it's like a very layered, iterative process. And I still have to kind of keep reminding myself that, like, oh yeah, the first draft is always terrible. I always,
Right.
you know, and then somehow miraculously the like 8th draft is pretty good, you know? So you just have to trust that that's going to be the case. But yeah, for me, it's like you
most
just have to get
writers,
something down there onto the page, and
Yeah.
then it's about rewriting and rewriting.
and how much of a procrastinator are you? Do you
I'm not a big procrastinator when it comes to writing,
Yeah,
because
you're too busy, right?
writing, because I know it's slow and it's time consuming, and
Right.
because I know that I'm always going to want to rewrite a lot, I do not ever want to find myself like with something due in 2 days and I just have to pull something together. I mean, and
Right,
I don't,
right.
this is why I'm also happy that I'm rarely, you know, am I in the position of like, you know, trying to write a hot take on a, you know, new release that has to be out immediately.
Yeah.
I don't function well in that environment. So I love Criterion. They always give me lots of lead time.
Right.
usually,
Right.
and I like to have it done in enough time that I know I'll be able to, you know, have the time to do that rewriting. And especially because there's always a point where I have to step away from it for a minute.
Right.
Like you get so into it and you're so familiar with it that you can't see it clearly anymore. And then you have to kind of set it aside for a day or two, and then you come back to it.
That's fascinating.
That's
Yeah.
the greatest gift you can give yourself, is the time to be able to take a break from it.
I will say, you know, I not to make myself sound too virtuous. I mean, I procrastinate about other things. Anything
The groceries.
like, you know, cleaning the apartment, you know, paying my bills. It's like, I'm a big procrastinator, but not about writing, because it's too stressful. Although I will say, I will share that with that essay on Tales of the Four Seasons, it was like the day that it was due, you know, that we'd agreed on turning in my first draft. And I was still struggling with the very end. And like minutes before I set myself, I was like, I'm going to send it by noon. I want to get it in. And like 5 minutes before I was going to send it, I came up with the last sentence, which I will say is one of my, you know, one of the things I like the most that I've written. And I was kind of like, this is either really great or it's like total nonsense. And I don't know, but I'm sending it and we'll figure it out. Because of course, things also go through several edits at Criterion. So it's not like it's going to run in that form. But yeah, that was a rare moment where I was like up to the wire. And then it was like, there it is, you know, so that happens sometimes too.
It's funny how deadlines sometimes can be your friend.
Sometimes
so I've done the same thing.
I mean,
but I just don't like to be too, you know, up against it.
And I do want to thank Criterion
I
for
appreciate
them...
you indulging me on that, because that's kind of the nerdy that I love to hear, like different takes on the process. And I just find it fascinating, and I'm sure our listeners will find find
I'm
something awesome out
no
of
doubt
that.
they will.
So
Yeah. And unfortunately, I closed the browser, but I guess, read the essay and then read her brilliant ending, rather than just skip to the ending.
that
So
she came up with 5 minutes
5
before she
minutes.
sent it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go
Listen.
reread it, knowing that and saying, "Well, okay, it worked." So, okay, well, we are a Criterion podcast, so we have just a little bit of time, and I do want to get through the October releases, which you're on, which is, as I mentioned, that's really awesome, and great luck, great timing. So, thank you, for Criterion, for programming your October around our podcast.
That's
So, I'm
right.
going to share again, and
Oh, I
oh yeah,
can't
so
wait.
self
Oh my
plug.
God, I cannot.
We did a Days and Confused shirt for Cine Journeys, so go to Cine Journeys, and that's up there. But
Designed by our friend Caitlin
Caitlin
Kuwald,
Kuwald, yes. Speaking
who
of
has designed many a cover for, excuse me, not designed, illustrated
illustrated,
many
yeah.
a cover for Criterion, and so she's awesome and did our Cine Journeys artwork for our website,
Hmm.
and we will be collaborating with Caitlin more in the future.
Yeah, we
But
already have
yeah,
a
let's get.
couple things.
Oh, oh yeah. So Val Lewton, I cannot wait for this set. I have seen both of these films. They are amazing. Lewton was just man, just like one of those producers and directors in early Hollywood that you're just like, how was he able to make these films? Um, just a groundbreaking filmmaker. And look at
Or
this artwork.
yeah, producer
It's
and
or
kind of
producer. I mean,
kind of
well,
the
I
anti-auteur,
still
yeah.
feel like he is a filmmaker.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And to our discussion about the male gaze or the female gaze, to your point, Imogen, about the director, the screenwriter, they're writing characters, but it's a whole bunch of people behind the camera. So Val Lewton is a great example of that. It's not just one person. So that's the
Exactly.
anti-auteur. I love Luton's library. There are a few on Criterion already. I know the Cat People. Am I forgetting one? Curse of the Cat. Oh wait, is Curse of the Cat People on Criterion? I can't remember.
I,
But
No.
these are
no,
two
I
I have
think.
not seen. Yeah.
Oh wow. So yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I Walked with a Zombie is my favorite of this
Yes.
cycle of Val Lewton horror films. I've always really, really loved this film. I
Mm.
like The Seventh Victim too, but I hadn't, when I first was thinking about this, um, I didn't think so much of these two films together. They are by different directors.
Mhm.
Mhm,
I Walked with a Zombie is Jacques Tourneur, who directed Cat People as well, and The Leopard
mhm.
Man. And then The Seventh Victim is Mark Robeson. But I realized when I looked at these films that they're almost like companion pieces in certain ways.
Yes.
They are have completely different settings, very different kind of feeling to them because the settings are so different. But all of these interesting echoes. They both have this female protagonist
Mhm.
who travels to an unfamiliar place where she is functioning kind of as a detective, kind of as a sort of almost like a knight errant who is trying to save another woman who is endangered in some way. And then from there, it all gets really complicated, and both of the women wind up, falling in love with the husbands of the women they're sort of trying to save, and so there's all this ambiguity about it. But they both are also steeped in this melancholy and this kind of obsession with death, and it was interesting, particularly to look at The Seventh Victim again and think about how many really interesting female characters it has, how it's kind of about these female spaces. Um, so I enjoyed delving into that one. And yeah, I
And
think I think they make a nice pairing is what is all I'm really saying. They go well together because they're kind of like variations on a theme, but different enough that they're not at all, it's not
Mhm.
at all like you're seeing the same thing again, but
And a lot
but
of
there
us
are
have seen different
interesting
films, yeah,
correspondence.
by those directors too. So Robeson, Tournier, or I always
Yeah.
mispronounce his name, so
Tenor.
apologies, Tenor. Yeah, but yeah, this was a nice surprise, as we mentioned. So we got a little interview with critic and historian. So I guess that's what we call you, critic and historian. We got your title, and then two
Well,
audio commentaries. But
Imogen's
and
like,
I.
well,
no, it's kind of ambiguous, which is very suitable for this film, which is, you know, all
Hmm.
about genre ambiguity and all kinds of ambiguity and doubleness.
Kind of
yeah,
like Petite Maman. No, I
Yes.
can't wait to see your interview. I of course you know this.
We
We've always enjoyed your takes. I guess
oh,
not the 2 sentence letterbox takes, but your 20 minute I guess overview. And you know, because I see you so much, and when I see you, I see you on the channel, on discs, hear your voice on commentaries. When I read your stuff, so when I read the Romero essay, for example, I read it in your voice. I hear your voice. So I don't know if that's deliberate. If that, you know, you just talked about your process. If you have the same process for
I
doing
think we
the
need
interviews.
audio. I think you need to do audio recordings of all your essays, Imogen. I think that would be
Yeah,
fantastic. It would
we
be
should have
also
just had
very
you read
soothing.
read your
Yeah, we're
Romero
just
essay
gonna
for the whole
have you
podcast.
read everything. Yeah,
And look, we have audio essays from a podcast on a disc, so that we missed our chance, Jill, to get
I
on
know.
Criterion. But
I
yeah,
know.
looking forward to this. Do you want to share anything about you know, kind of how you approached this piece?
um well, typically, you know, we want to figure out what would complement the other things that are on the disc. So,
Hmm.
you
Mhm.
know, the producer I was working with knew that she was going to have these excerpts from Adam Roche's podcast. And so and that
Gotcha.
there would be this documentary about Val Lewton. So I did not focus on Val Lewton in my piece because,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
we kind of have that covered. I didn't, you know, I focus on the things that are in the Secret History podcast excerpts. Um, you know, so we go back and forth and we talk about what are the topics we want to cover, and then we refine it into an outline for the piece. One of the things that was the most fun about I Walked with a Zombie was I felt I wanted to really delve into the representation of, you know, what in the film is called voodoo, what, you know, is often more
Yes.
Right.
there's a lot of uh different ways people pronounce it, Vodou, Vodun, but you know, this actual African diasporic religious practices of the West Indies. And there are these amazing scenes in the movie where they go to the home fort, which is the kind of you know, headquarters. There's music, there's dancing, there's ritual, and the film really originally was inspired by some reporting um, about these ceremonies and about the idea of zombies. This is, you know, not zombies as, you know, the undead rising from the grave and, you know,
Right.
eating
Right.
people's
It's
brains.
not
This
not a
is
living dead. Right.
no,
No.
this is
No. No. No.
you know, this is the sort of traditional idea of the zombie as someone who has been in some way deprived of willpower and
Right.
is a kind of um, you know, there's a very clearly a connection with enslavement and with idea, you know,
Yes.
the legacy of enslavement in these colonies. So we did a lot of research into, you know, what were their sources, where were they, how did they come up with all of this, who are some of the musicians and the dancers who appear in these scenes, because it's very different from what you're seeing in other Hollywood movies, which is much more kind of sensationalized and
Hmm.
um, you know, has very little concern with accuracy. And Lewton was loved to do research. You know, every one of these films is based in some kind of culture. You know, it's and folklore and he loved to gather all these stacks of books and have everybody, delving into these things. And so that was really fun, to sort
It
of.
shows. It shows in
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
single one of his films, which is why I said
Absolutely.
earlier, like how he was able to do this in this era of, you know, kind of glossing over or glamorizing whatever. It's
Mhm.
incredible. It's incredible that he existed and did this. Um, yeah, it all shows in his work.
And I want to shout out the covers are beautiful too. And I'll do a fast scroll. The essays are by I don't know Chris Fujiwara
Uh,
and Lucy
he-
Sante.
oh, they're both excellent. Chris Fujiwara wrote a book about Jacques Tourneur,
Oh,
um,
nice.
called
Oh,
Cinema Twilight, which
yes.
is very good, and which I,
Mhm.
consulted when I was doing. I had read it before, but consulted for my research. And Lucy Sant, is a great writer on many, many subjects. Writer of Low Life, the great history of sort of New York underworld. But she's written quite a number of Criterion essays as well. So
Nice.
Awesome.
I'm sure I've read those. And by the way, Criterion, thank you for putting those online for people that cannot read these small booklets like me. They don't have without like, super magnified glasses. It's not a great experience. But oh yeah. So I this month's slate was very well received, and I think that's actually pretty impressive for 4 discs. But of course, we have 2 films here. But I think this one is seen by many people to be the treasure, although there might be one other one. So gonna jump into Shinoda. So Demon Pond. I love this cover too. Sorry, I have to
It's
scroll down.
stunning.
It is gorgeous. I haven't seen this, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't even know this existed. Of course, I know Shinoda, but Yuko Shimizu. Speaking of the Shimizu, different, maybe related, but maybe not. So of course, 4K, and I want to say, what else does he have in collection? Oh yeah, quite a bit. So Pale Flower, of course. Wait, Rebel
I
Samurai.
am a
Oh
big
yeah,
fan of Pale Flower.
I am too. I like the gambling element of that. And oh, Oh, I thought that was Oh, that is Shinoda. Yeah, okay. That's DVD only. So Demon Pond. Um, I take it. Jill, Imogen, have you seen either of you
I
seen
have
this? We
not
No.
won't
seen this
judge.
either. I'm very excited to. It looks amazing.
I
I
mean, this
think.
artwork is drawing me in instantly. So, you know, I'm gonna judge this movie by the cover. I'm going in. I
Yeah,
love it.
it looks great, and love Japanese film. Also love starts with Japanese New Wave Renegade. I mentioned Oshima for just a second ago, looking at, and I think that's kind of in that vicinity where what his work, what I've seen of it, reminds me of. So
I mean,
yeah,
look at
again,
this description, Aaron. Aquatic, apocalyptic fable of human love and folly caught in the current of nature's wrath. I mean, come on.
I know.
That's incredible.
And I gotta say, my favorite Criterion announcement is one that I never saw coming. So it's like it's literally a discovery of something I did not know, like the day before it was announced. So, and so we'll just look real quick through what is here. So yeah, we'll read that essay. Let me see who did the. Oh, they don't say who did the cover, so I don't know if that means
Yeah, new
Eric.
New
illustration right there.
illustration.
Oh, I'm
Yuko
sorry.
Shimizu.
See. I told you about my
Yuko
eyes.
Shimizu.
Yuko did the
Yeah.
cover. I was confusing the essay. So that's Michael Atkinson. So yeah, and then of course the 4K. I don't know if you've noticed a difference with your setup, but I just recently watched The Bound. Picked that up in the Barnes and Noble sale, which is just gorgeous, especially that second half, the way they use the different shot angles, but it's a remarkable improvement for me at least. Some people say they don't see it. I think that depends on their setup, but I have a feeling that this one is going to look. Let me just look at the screenshots. Wow, kind of
Oh
looks like
yeah, I'm on board already.
Kobayashi.
Okay, that looks crazy. I love it.
Yeah. Um,
Oh my
do you
goodness.
do you have any Shinodas that you enjoy, Imogen? And if you don't, no worries. Oh, that's
Well, I
beautiful.
just said I love Pale Flower.
Oh, right,
Yes.
right, yeah, yeah.
Um, and I love the stylization of it, and
Yeah, this looks like
it's
it's
one of
going to
the
be a.
great city at night kind of
Yeah.
nihilistic noir films. But yes, I also loved some of the kind of, folk horror and ghost movies of this
Yeah.
period.
Awesome.
The,
So
the stills did
I am
remind me
so
of
feeling bored as
Qui-Gon
well.
a little bit, and maybe Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors a little bit. This one is almost like Hausu almost,
I was about to
but
say that looked very House Sue like.
yeah.
So we've also got an upgrade, correct? Is
Yes,
this an
a
upgrade?
Blu-ray,
Yeah.
a blue grade. We haven't had
Yeah.
we had a lot of 4Ks. So this we're on Pandora's Box by GW Pabst, or as our good friend Dave Eves said, and Imogen, this is facetious. I think he calls them Guapast
What passed?
because yeah. But yeah, GW Pabst, Pabst, Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Pabst
Um,
blue ribbon. Yes.
First off, there's a new cover, and Louise Brooks, of course, a lot of us know her. She's a phenomenal actress, and this is, let me see what spine number this is. It's got to be an early one.
It and
358.
it is, and it's been out of print.
Yes.
I know
Yes.
because a friend of mine requested it, and I wanted to get it for him for gift, and I saw that it was out of print. So I'm very happy that it's getting an upgrade and
Yes.
going to be available again. I actually wrote this, I think I assume same digital restoration was put out in the UK by Eureka Masters of Cinema. And
Oh,
I actually wrote an essay for
oh,
that
nice.
on Louise Brooks, whom I love and am fascinated by. Of course,
Yes.
she
Yeah.
has this very, unusual career, and she wound up in Rochester,
Yeah.
New York, because she was sort of encouraged to move up there by James Card, who was a curator at Eastman House, and she became a writer on film, and she's a brilliant writer, and her own writings are really worth seeking out. There's a
Wonderful.
great collection called Lulu in Hollywood of her essays
Yes.
and
Yeah.
memoir.
I
You know,
have that downstairs on my shelf.
my wife is
Yes.
from Rochester, and her dad worked for Kodak. So now he did not work on this film or any of these that we've referenced. But yeah, I love the look of this disc. So I'm sure
Yes, and
it's going to look
the
gorgeous
girl in
in
the
real
black
life.
helmet is the famous profile of Brooks by Kenneth
Yes.
Tynan, where he
Nice.
talks about going to Rochester and meeting her in her little apartment. And, it was one of the sort of, she had this tremendous kind of rediscovery after having been completely forgotten and kind of falling into a degree of kind of neglect and impoverishment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, happened a lot in this era. But yeah, I've not, I don't have this. I have a lot of the DVDs, not all of them. So I may probably because, and thank you, Imogen, for trying to buy a gift and making that, because I'm crediting you for, because you said, Peter, where's
For
this?
bringing.
And you willed this to existence with your generosity. But yeah, and I think the supplements are all ported from the DVD, is what it appears. There's nothing noted as new here, at the cover, except for the cover. And Eric, of
Except,
course,
yeah.
he's of course the man. So it looks like mostly still shots, but very tasteful. So very good job there. And hopefully this
you
will be
cannot go wrong with pictures of Louise Brooks.
yes,
No, no, just one
she's
of
so
the,
photogenic.
I say this in like the most respectful way. She was just the cutest little thing ever. Just just a whole, I don't know, the way she carries herself, her hair, I mean, she's gorgeous too, but there's just kind of a almost fairy
As-
like look to her. I absolutely adore her.
Her hairstylist, wow. I mean, probably
It's
daily,
very
or
chic, très chic.
maybe 2, 3 times a week. Yeah, no, she's awesome. Yeah, really looking forward to this. This is an instant buy. And regarding your essay. So I don't know if Masters of Cinema is the same as Criterion and puts it online. I love Masters of Cinema and support them. So, but I'm not going to buy 2 discs. So,
No, I
so
don't.
I'll try to read that. And but maybe it's if it's on sale someday. You never know. So the last, and I don't know if I was going to say last but not least. So this is a weirder one. So I think
Yeah.
this might be out of all of our wheelhouses. I don't want to speak for anybody, but we have Harmony Korine. I believe, pretty sure this is his first time in the collection. Pretty much. So we talked about Shinoda being Renegade New Wave. I'd say that description probably is fair for
Hmm.
him for 90s.
Hmm.
Very provocative, and part of that indie scene in the 90s, which we've seen Solons and the Doom Generation, Greg Araki, with those coming out. It seems like there's a nice little stretch here in the upcoming few months with a few of these. So interesting to revisit some of these. I think I saw Gummo. I don't know. I've heard it talked about endlessly, and I think maybe I've been scared of it. So, first off, I will say the cover looks great. Kind of looks like David Lynch's Bunnies. So I don't know if that's in the film. So I'll just start with Imogen. Are you
Yeah,
familiar with
I have
Gummo?
not seen, I have not seen this. No,
Okay.
so you are
Yeah.
correct. This is kind of out of my wheelhouse. I am given a little bit of pause by the hunting stray cats.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just read,
Yeah.
I have trouble with films that depict,
That's why I've been
cats,
scared. I have a
especially suffering. No,
I've seen
I
I
just,
I
it's
have seen
great that they
bits
are,
from this. Yes, Imogen,
excuse
I
me,
yeah.
don't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt
Yeah.
you, but like I have seen bits and pieces from this. Um, I am extremely glad that it's going to be available. This is one of those situations where I say, good for you. I am going to just let y'all have this one, and I'm gonna, you know, just step back and realize that not all cinema is made for all people. But I'm happy for
right,
all of you who are happy.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same boat,
yeah.
but I will check it. I mean, I try to be as open-minded as possible, and of course, as looking at a lot of, for instance, I hate to single them out, but some African cinema, European cinema, there is animal violence. You have to kind of get accustomed to that at some point. Australian cinema, Wake and Fright, for example, Tookie
Hey, I mean,
Boogie,
rules of the game. I mean,
Rule. Oh yeah,
I find
yeah,
that
Yeah.
scene hard to
that's
watch.
that is
And
yeah,
the
yeah,
Mouchette,
and again, oh
it is
yeah.
unfortunately a big, it cannot be avoided.
And that
Yeah.
the documentary I can't remember the documentary that's on the we're not editing, so I'm not going to even go in there, but the abattoir documentary. But anyway, uh yeah, I'll check it out. Of course, I prefer my cats to shoot lasers out of their eyes, like we were just talking about with House, and we are gonna cover that in October. I mean, you can't see House too many times, and Imogen, I don't know if you've seen My World with Levon, Levon the crazy insane cat, who, by the way, has been on the
No,
same
but I
tiny
had seen the Cassandra cat,
the
which was
Cassandra.
on the channel recently, which is
Oh,
the kind of Czech new wave
Oh,
magical
right.
realist film about a cat that wears sunglasses, and
Well,
I'm
okay,
hey,
a
that
fan
sounds
of that.
amazing.
we've come full circle, cat
Yeah.
people. So yeah, cat.
See the
Interestingly,
Cassandra
gum.
cat, there it
Yeah,
is.
the Cassandra cat
Yeah,
right there.
yeah, right
Yeah.
there. I'll have to check that out. So, and what's weird is Gummo is the sixth result or seventh. Yeah, I can't count. Sixth result
When
for
you type in cat. Oh, good
seventh. Yeah,
God.
when you type in cat. So yeah,
Um,
cat lovers beware. Oh, Laterland is
beware.
actually a great use of cats. Thank you for including that. That should be at least number
Excellent.
two.
For
Yeah,
Yes.
Michelle Simone was obsessed with those cats. Yeah, I'm again, yeah, I love cats, love animals. I'll give it a shot. So and we'll see. But
The artwork looks fantastic, I will
it
say
does.
that. But from what I don't think I've ever seen it from start to finish, but I saw enough because there was an obsession with that film when I was coming out of high school and going into college, and it was definitely making the rounds in kind of the campus vibe, and I was just wholly turned off by it. So
Yeah.
I am definitely open to certain things, but I can't go there. So really exciting on the
Yeah.
releases for that month. Even for the people that love Gummo. So one thing Aaron and I, just to kind of wrap things up, here is we have this last year we did November, and we
Oh,
we did a
right.
November journey, and we are going to do it again. Well, not necessarily a scheduled
Well,
journey, but
it's
we
gonna
are
be a
celebrating.
blogathon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we are celebrating November. And one thing that Aaron and I talked about how we miss in that kind of heyday of blogging are the blogathons. And I know that there's still blogs that are participating in that, but it's definitely not the way it used to be. But we want to try to bring that back. So we are going to host our first blogathon. It will be for November, and Aaron and I have picked our noir films that we are going to write about and discuss. And we just wanted to get your opinion on mine is
We're typecasting you
Edward
again as
Dimitri's. Yes, we're
Murder,
typecasting
murder,
you as Murder My Sweet. And one thing I was talking to you, Imogen, about before we recorded is I love this movie because it is well, and I just love Dick Powell because there are people who know about either his Song and Dance Man, early musicals,
Panic
Busby
Chipmunk
Berkeley.
days.
That's yes, where he's just like, hello. And then there are the people who know about his, as he was a producer, he was in Westerns,
Director.
he was in film noir, he was a director, the whole uh shit show that was the Conqueror. Was it the Conqueror where it's John Wayne as
John
Genghis
Wayne as Genghis Khan.
and
Yes,
like
I've not seen that.
everyone in that on that movie pretty much either they got cancer, and like a lot of them died from that cancer. It was just not only just a crazy set and film, and Lord knows John Wayne should not be playing Genghis Khan, but like where they filmed, it was like I think it was like a nuclear testing site or something. So they like everyone, Susan Hayward got cancer. They all got cancer, including Dick
Yeah.
Powell. But they all so they either know that noir Western director side or they know the Song and Dance Man. And so I always use this movie as like the point of entry for either phase
Oh,
of
and that
his
was his first, I think that was his first
yes.
uh first attempt at
Yeah.
this
Yes.
tough character. I mean, I know he
Yes.
really wanted to play Walter Neff in Double Indemnity.
Yep.
Did not get that role.
And I think as perfect as McMurray is in that film, I think
I could see Dick
would've-
Powell in it too.
I can too. I mean, in this film, he's striking a match on a statue of a cherub, on the butt crack of that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think he also proved, his chops. So, I think he.
Yeah, I mean,
it's tough to
I
step in
would
that role.
say
Yeah.
my favorite Dick Powell tough guy performance is actually probably Cry Danger.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Which is a really wonderful film that is not as well known as it should be. The Noir Foundation did restore it, and I think it got it released years ago, but it seems to have sort of fallen off the radar again. But it's just, every single line is just steeped in this totally deadpan, sarcastic, attitude that he has, and he's living in this rundown trailer park with Richard Erdman as an alcoholic, a disabled veteran in sort of Bunker Hill, Los Angeles. It's a great film. I love Murder My Sweet. I mean, it's one of those, just like every minute of it is so entertaining.
Yes.
I will say, I am a great lover of Raymond Chandler, the books. To me, is Dick Powell really Philip Marlowe? Not to me. I don't think there was ever, I don't think the perfect actor ever played Marlowe. I mean, Dick Powell is perfect with the wisecracking, with the insolence.
Yes.
He doesn't quite have the sort of the kind of world weary melancholy gravitas that Marlowe should have. But he's good. Everything in the movie is good. Claire Trevor is fantastic.
Oh yeah,
The cinematography is fantastic.
gorgeous.
It's a
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah, I
delight.
wanted to pick a Dick
film.
Pal noir, and I was thinking about Cry Danger, and then I was also like, oh, do I go Tall Target, which is kind of like Western
That's a
noir,
Mhm.
good film
That's
too.
Man, right?
which I
Stephanie
love that one
Mann.
so much.
Mhm.
But I opted for this just because of that psychedelic, like infused spider webby scene. It's
Yes.
just
Oh,
there's so
those are
much good in
gorgeous.
this. So
Yeah.
yeah, awesome.
Well, this is weird because I was tempted to go for an obscure one or one I hadn't seen or one that's under seen. I guess that could appreciate some more eyes. I went in the total opposite direction, and this is kind of like when we show up to the same event wearing the same clothes because I also chose a Raymond Chandler and probably the biggest one. I'm choosing The Big Sleep
Got the Howard
because
Hawks.
the Howard Hawks, and I've already bought the book. So, and like you, Imogen, I love Chandler's work as well, and I also like to. I have fun studying film with books. Last Noir, I did Alone in a Lonely Place with the Dorothy B. Hughes book, which, by the way, is nothing like the movie. You could not make that that
Nothing
book into a movie.
whatsoever, but they're
Yeah.
both, and they're both great
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
almost
Yes.
completely unrelated.
Yes, very
Yes.
grisly. Very that book is very grisly. But there were actually two people in that book that had the same names as the people in the movie. But yeah, very different dynamic. The Big Sleep is one I've seen countless times, and I've studied in film studies classes, but the thing is, and you know this, probably everybody knows, like it makes no sense. So I've watched it like every couple years, but that's not like probably 5 or 10 times, somewhere between 5 and 10 times. But like every time I see it, I've forgotten. So like I'm just gonna watch it 5 times and read the book and see
It's
if
definitely
the
hard to go if someone says, "What's this movie about?" You go, "I
I don't
don't know."
know. So I saw you react to Imogen. Maybe is there a mystery to be solved here?
Well, people always make much of the idea that they couldn't figure out who had committed one of the murders,
Right.
who killed Owen Taylor, the Sternberg chauffeur. And they asked Chandler, and he went, I'm not sure. Um, Honestly, as much as people say that, the answer to that particular mystery seems pretty obvious to me. And I don't know if I don't want to spoil this for people
Spoil,
who
right?
maybe haven't seen the movie, but I think it's, you know, there is a character who says, I didn't do it, but
Mm,
it seems like he probably did. And if you just assume that he's lying, then mystery solved. Um, I mean, I love Chandler for the fact that he didn't care about plot, and he
hmm.
said the
Right.
best
Yeah.
the best detective story would be one you would read even if the last page was missing. Because he
That's a
was
Right.
great
very
quote.
contemptuous of the kind of Agatha Christie, puzzle whodunit where it's all about can you
Right.
guess the outcome,
Comes
and
together. Yeah.
and his idea is always like there's never like one bad guy or bad woman more
Hmm.
likely in Chandler, but it's like the corruption is everywhere, and as soon as you start to you turn over one stone,
Hmm.
all the stuff comes out. And he wrote The Big Sleep. He basically cobbled together a bunch of short stories that he had written, and sort of turned them into a novel, which is part of also why it doesn't make, it's very convoluted. The reason the movie is so confusing, though, I think, is largely to do with censorship.
Mm.
There's so much in the book that they could not put into the movie. There's, pornography, and there's homosexuality, and there's, nymphomania, and there's all this stuff that they're
Yeah.
it's like if you've read the book, you can kind of
None of
see
that.
where they're maybe slightly hinting at something, but so it's like there are all these moments where you're like, what is going on here? Like, what is with this bookstore that there's something about this bookstore, but
Mhm.
we don't really know what it is. And it's because in the book, it's a pornography library where they're renting smutty books, but they couldn't put that in the movie. So there are these moments where there are these weird gaps, or you're just not quite sure
Mm.
what's going on,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
because there's just stuff they couldn't have in there.
Yeah.
And they also changed they changed the ending. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
changes that were made for censorship purposes.
Yeah.
It's also an interesting film because Chandler and Hawks are so different temperamentally, and again, I love Hawks as well, but Hawks is not interested, Hawks is really not interested in the femme fatale. Like there are no
Right.
femme fatales in Hawks's movies. That was not something an idea that had any appeal for him. And so he gives all of it this Hawksian spin, and there's a lot of, sort of Hawksian humor and stuff that gets into it. Plus they're making it as a star vehicle for Bogart and Bacall. So they have to end up together, which the characters don't in the book. And so there's kind of, obviously could go on and on, which I won't,
Sure,
but
yeah.
I think the thing about that
Another
movie
time.
is you watch it and it's another movie that's just incredibly entertaining. Like every scene is so entertaining. But yeah,
Exactly.
there's a strangeness about it, which is because there were kind of all of these different things going into it. There's Chandler, then you have this script that's written partly by William Faulkner and partly by Lee Brackett, who allegedly worked on different sections simultaneously without ever looking at each other's work. There's censorship, and then they come out with this one version of it and they preview it and they decide they need to make all these changes, and so then they go back and they cut some of the kind of plot stuff, and they cut the scene where Bogart as Philip Marlowe explains everything, because instead they wanted to put in some more scenes of Bogart and Bacall, flirting. And
of course.
So there's all of these kind of things going on, and you come out with this film that is a delight to watch and, doesn't really hang together.
It's totally confounding.
It is not the most confusing noir film by any means.
Well, our listeners and watchers might, are you going to share? Okay.
I will.
Yeah.
I would be happy to share what my personal
Please be.
Lady from Shanghai.
Oh, that's a great one.
That's the one, and I did a commentary for it. Harry Cohn, the producer at Columbia, famously, allegedly offered $1,000 to anyone who could explain the story to him. And I don't know, there was 5 minutes where I was like, I think I got it. And now if you ask me to explain this plot, I would be like, absolutely no clue.
Well, the production itself was, and we were talking before
because of the
with Wells.
of the production.
Yeah. I actually studied that in film class.
The best movies, though, are the ones that you're you're in it and you're so immersed in it and you're like, this is so good. And then at the end of it, you're like,
what was that?
What
just happened?
Well, that was like how we went to see we took our daughter to see The Boy and the Heron, the Miyazaki film, and the whole time I'm like, this is amazing, this is beautiful, God, I'm really digging this. And then I left and I was like, well, what? And then someone was asking me, well, what was it about? And I was like,
there's some mirrors.
It was really beautiful, and those are the best movies. There were birds. There were people that were inside of birds. I don't know, but that makes the best movie, where you're just so in the moment and just experiencing everything that's coming at you. And then you leave and you go, well, what did I just see? It's fantastic.
Yeah, if I could just real quick, I know we're running along, but I studied this in film class in college, and the professor had us watch it on our own. And then the next class, hour 10, hour 20 minutes, it's one of those short films. As Imogen, I know you love your short films. So are short compared to Lawrence of Arabia. Commentaries, yes. We have the Napoleons to average that out. But she played the actual screen, or the actual film, during class without sound. She also did it with the Scarlet Empress, which of course is also gorgeous and has all the gargoyles and stuff. But it was just as cool to watch it without sound, without dialogue, and of course you barely know what's going on, even with sound, even with dialogue. And I love that movie. I know we could get into Wells for 5 hours, literally, but maybe another time. But that's a great one. I think I have to. I don't think I've seen that commentary of yours. Which release was that? Was it Kino or? I know there's an
It was Gumo.
indicator. It was
Yes,
Kino. Okay.
I
Oh, I
think.
don't think
Awesome.
I have the indicator, so I'll have to look for the Kino. But anyway, Imogen, thank you for being
Oh
so
my
generous. I
gosh.
know we ran a
Thank
little
you.
long. It's so great to see you and talk to you again. Do you want? I know that you're not really in social media, but is there anything you want to share to listeners, viewers, as to where to find you, what you're doing?
Well, yes, I am not on social media. But I guess I would like to mention that I am going to be teaching another class through Main Media Workshops, which is going to be around 1940s, the 1940s, and it's a two-part class. I recently taught a 1930s Hollywood class. This is going to be a bit more of an international approach, but the first half, which starts in September, is looking at these kind of certain kind of maverick filmmakers of the 40s. And actually, I will do Val Lewton, Wells, obviously, Powell and Pressburger, the Archers,
Nice.
and then kind of get into Ida Lupino and sort of rise of independent
Awesome.
filmmaking.
Yes.
So coming out of this sort of absolute peak era of studio era filmmaking, looking at some of the people who are starting to kind of, break a lot of those rules of classical cinema. And then part two is going to be sort of the global post-war sort of rise of noir. So looking at this kind of post-war moment in different countries and, some of the different kind of cinematic trends of that era. So
That
Oh,
sounds
that
awesome. Yeah.
and that's
So,
also like right
uh,
up my alley. I
Yeah.
love 1940s cinema so much. Anything directly around and during the war, like it is. That
yes.
is like
So
my
I'm
sweet
very
spot.
excited for that. And yes, you can probably share a link with people, but it can be found on
Sure.
the Main Media Workshops website.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I guess maybe the other thing I could mention is, I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but I did last year take over editing Noir City, the Journal of the Film Noir Foundation.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
Yeah, we didn't.
yeah, so
Congratulations. I mean,
I
belated.
saw that you
Very.
were Miss
Yes.
Noir City on the cover. I sent it to Aaron and I go, that's Imogen.
Yeah.
And he's like, are you sure? And I looked at it and saw Imogen, and I was like, she's Miss Noir City. I love it.
yes, that is true.
So
And
add
it's really funny to
model.
see how many people said, like, is that you?
Yeah, but add model
it is
to your
me.
resume now.
There you go.
So critic, historian, model. I love it.
Yeah.
But yes, so
That's awesome.
this is a roughly quarterly e-journal. Anyone who donates to the Film Noir Foundation to support their work restoring and screening noir films gets a subscription to the journal, which is also now available we have a hard copy version. It's very beautifully designed by our designer, Michael Cronenberg. But yeah, so that's something else people can check out. And we have an issue coming out soon in the next few weeks.
It's an excellent publication for anyone that's, I mean, first of all, everyone, if you can, you should support Film Noir Foundation because they do amazing work. But the publication is so good. I've been getting it for years, and I'm always looking forward to getting my copy. So definitely check that out. And I'm so happy to see that you're editing that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I think we actually had the same call to action last time. So hopefully people subscribed. But I think I've subscribed, but I have like 55,000 emails. Jill gets PTSD just seeing my inbox, but again, so yeah, I feel guilty now about joking about the typecast noir thing because I know you love it, and I'm really glad you're at the helm there and
That's
kind
a
of the
great thing to
steward.
be typecast as, I would just
Yeah,
say.
it
I
is
don't
I
really
actually.
mean,
have
come
any
on.
complaints, I have to
That's
say.
awesome.
People
That's
want to
awesome.
typecast me,
There you go. All right, Noir Late. Well, she is
as
Noir
the
Noir
Late.
noir
lady.
lady.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you,
Well,
Imogen.
thank you.
You can find the show at Cine Journeys Master Feed. We are going to have an announcement about Criterion Now and Criterion Close-Up coming soon, so we'll save that for another day. Buy our shirt, subscribe to our journeys. It's fun stuff. We're doing making a lot of people happy, and yeah, that's pretty much us. So thank you again, Imogen. It's great to see you,
Yes,
and
thank you.
Great talking with you.
you too.